Hi folks, Florida Man here. Today it's my pleasure to present a conversation between myself and Owl, real name Hunter, one of the strongest players on PlayDiplomacy.com, on the subject of diplomacy strategy. We discuss different types of alliances and their strengths and weaknesses with a focus on playing as England or as Italy. We also dipped our toes into topics such as which centers are most valuable for different countries, whether the 1900 variant of diplomacy is as good as the classic variant, and whether armies are better or worse, more or less powerful than fleets. The answer may surprise you, among other topics. I hope you'll enjoy this. I enjoyed making it. It's a pleasure meeting you, Hunter, face-to-face for the first time. Douglas/Florida Man here. To the Play Diplomacy viewers, you are Owl of PlayDiplomacy.com.
Yeah, so on the forum, I think we had some disagreements about, which I think Germany can win with any ally, but we both have different preferences, it seems. But I guess, so one thing I had a question for you, actually. So I think, personally, when I'm playing as Germany, I find it difficult to take some of those faraway eastern centers, like in Austria or Sevastopol, for example. Yeah. So maybe if you're better at doing that, though, I could understand, because I noticed, I watched your Basics of Germany video, and I saw I enjoyed looking at a lot of the different maps of the final positions of German solos. So I'm just wondering, maybe do you have any advice about how to take those faraway Austrian centers or things like Sevastopol when you play?
I think what I would say about getting Austrian centers is that in the mid to late game, it's really good for Germany to start being able to work with Italy, if you haven't already. I wouldn't assume that I'm actually better at playing Germany than you are, because I suspect you're better. I feel like my strongest suits are playing as the three Eastern powers. But we did have some disagreement. You actually kind of half convinced me that you were right about it being better to work with England, because looking over my past games, I did realize that I did at least as well allying with England as Germany as I did allying with France. It was just in my head that France was better to work with.
I guess a lot of Germany players maybe just feel that way because England's an island or something.
I think so. I think the feeling is that it'll be difficult to conquer later on if you start out working with them and helping them grow. But especially if Germany does have a relationship of some kind with Italy, I think that England is ultimately not going to be in that position of security for very long, because if England, Germany, and Italy work together against France, then the East is probably good chance still not going to be settled. Italy might get involved in that fight, and or Italy might help Germany eliminate England, and the reverse, Italy helping England to eliminate Germany, is fairly unlikely, I think, most of the time. So if you're in that situation, then it would definitely have been much easier to take France out first than England. I suppose I just found myself thinking of England unopposed up there. But
yeah, I think a lot of people just see it that way. But personally, I actually believe France has better defense than England. I think Turkey's the strongest, but I think England comes third and after France. Because the thing is, a lot of France's centers are part of stalemate lines, whereas England's aren't.
I see what you mean. That's a good point. France is definitely a surprisingly strong defensible power if you make the right moves. I think France probably requires a bit more tactical know-how to defend it successfully, but for a strong player, France might be more defensible than England. I could definitely see that.
Yeah, I guess the thing I think about is, I guess the way I see it is, the thing is because the English centers, they're not part of any stalemate lines, whereas later on, for example, if you have to, if you have to take Iberia to solo because you're not able to take those faraway eastern centers, for example,
yes.
So Italy could be your ally, but maybe if they think you're a solo threat, maybe they could assist France, and if they work together, they can just stalemate you there.
That's a fair point. If you're getting to that point in the game and you haven't been able to get east and you're trying to get those extra dots from France, yeah, that's definitely a plausible scenario. I'm sure that's happened to some people as Germany.
It happened to me in a game playing as England once, because I was doing very well, but then later, they just started working together and they just stalemated me, and I wasn't able to take Tunisia or Iberia.
Yeah, I can totally see that. Oh, speaking of which, actually, the thing I most wanted to talk to you about, or that we had discussed talking about, was I think actually play as England specifically.
Yeah. So I think similar to Germany, I think a lot of countries can probably win with any ally. Yeah. So okay. So I guess I have different thoughts about this. So one thing with England is, all right. So I'll start with France. We can discuss strategies with England with all three different allies.
Sounds great.
So I think a lot of people, I mean, personally, France isn't my most preferred ally as England, but I think a lot of people feel that, not everybody, but I think a lot of people mention that England and France are natural enemies or something. They feel like they're natural enemies. But the thing is, here's the thing, like France can stab you early as England, but the thing is, if the French player actually wants to ally with you, I think we talked about this, so if you're England and you ally with France and the French player truly wants to ally with you and isn't just lying to you and trying to stab you early, you pretty much have a 100% chance of at least getting a draw. Because there's that position, in Scandinavia. So if you have units in Norway, St. Petersburg, and Denmark, you can't go down less than 7 centers. It's impossible.
That's true. And it's a really strong position, I think, as England to be allied with France.
Yes. So I think for France, it's easier to stab England in the early game, but I think for Germany, that's really difficult to stab England early. But I think in the later game, Germany can accomplish that. So I think a lot of English players, they feel like Germany's a better ally because it's harder for them to stab them. I don't think that's actually true. I think it's just the time the stab arrives.
I think you have a good point. I've seen in a lot of games where England is allied with France, and the English position just becomes harder and harder for France to crack as the game goes on, because England grows at a reasonable pace. France might have some problems as it advances through the Mediterranean, and Italy might be putting up a fight, or Austria and Turkey might be putting up a fight.
Yeah, I think in a lot of cases, if Italy puts up a reasonable fight, that could help England solo as well.
Yeah, I think so, because England can just, once it's got those Scandinavian centers and St. Petersburg, it's just going to sit there slowly expanding like a balloon filling with water, and become increasingly difficult for France to backstab. You'll afford to keep a unit on the island, and you will have increasingly more boots on the ground in Central Europe.
Exactly. Yeah.
I remember I had a game I saw recently where I thought I wasn't part of the Anglo-French alliance. I was in the East, I was Austria, but I thought that the increasing number of armies that England kept landing should just be setting off a lot of warning bells for France. And I discussed it with him after the game, and he admitted that it felt threatening to him, but there wasn't anything he could do about it because he was still trying to conquer all of Italy. And he couldn't really spare the units, and any move of his fleets back toward the west would immediately probably get him attacked. So he was in a really difficult spot.
Yeah, I agree. Also, I think for England, it's also usually have been able to negotiate a pretty good deal for France. So it actually sounds like it kind of favors France, but when you think about how the Italian centers are a little bit more challenging to take, it isn't. So usually the deal I make with France regarding the split of centers is I take Holland and Northern Germany and Scandinavia, while they take Belgium, Munich, and the Italian centers. So that leaves them with 11 and me with 10, so it sounds reasonable, and a lot of times they take that, but it's like they're getting one more, so it's reasonable.
I do think that's reasonable, and it can be a good proposal to make to France if you're England. As France, I'd probably be pretty leery of working with England, because I think that much more than Germany, France would have a lot of trouble with England later on. But that's just what we've been discussing.
Yeah, that's the thing. Personally, actually, I mean, I'm very good at playing France, but actually, personally, I think I don't actually. I don't think France is my favorite country to play there because I kind of feel like I'm forced to pick a certain ally because you kind of have to go after England if you want to solo as France.
I think so.
I mean, I've seen some games where France does ally with England, but England just lets them get a ridiculous share of the centers. Like they just let them take all of Germany and just all of. So they just let them take way too much, and then they're able to solo without even attacking England. But
That's
it
yeah.
seems foolish.
I've seen a lot of games where a player has an ally and does that in any variety of positions.
Yeah. So
That's not, we're talking about the players who are going to be a little more self-interested in their negotiations, who aren't going to allow for a lopsided.
So France can be a safe ally for England. So for example, I mean, one reason I put that thing on the forum about getting into Belgium is in a previous game I played. There was a game in the past where France seemed very interested in allying with me, so I believe they were allying with me. But I think I made a mistake, so I let them get 3 builds, and they still seemed very friendly. But they built Fritzen, Brest, and Marseille, and I just, and Italy told me they had an agreement with France, and that just sort of like made me alert. So I was able to defend myself, and I ended up surviving and, getting a draw in that game. But, when he came at me with those, it's like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
The thing about France is that if the French player is self-aware enough and proactive enough to know that being allied with England could be dangerous for him, he's going to, as soon as he can turn on England, he's going to do it, because the earlier he does it, the better for him.
Yeah. I do, however, think it's easy to achieve a two-way draw if France allies with England, though. I think it's difficult to solo, but it's not really hard to defend yourself. I mean, you just leave one fleet in Spain or something just in case. You just leave one. Because especially if you, maybe it depends on when England stabs you, but by the time England takes, all those centers I mentioned in the deal in the games I've played, France usually also has the Italian centers by then.
That's a good point.
So, I mean, sometimes they don't leave units to defend themselves, but I think if there's, it's not really threatening. You just leave a fleet in Spain or something, so, England can't just get into Portugal because your units are too far away, you're not getting a build. So that happened once. So France's armies were just, very far away. Their fleets were very far away. As I was able to I just had this fleet in the north, the North Norwegian Sea, just moved to, North Atlantic, Mid-Atlantic, and then into Portugal. Anyway, I think it's very easy to achieve a two-way draw with France allies with England, though. So I think for France, it's also a safe alliance, though it's less I don't think you can solo, but I think it is a safe alliance for France, though, as well.
I think it can be. You have to be proactive in the ways you were just describing and defend yourself in those areas. Yeah,
and it's not even a threat or anything. It's just you just leave a fleet in Spain or something, so they can't get into Portugal without. Yeah. So while I do think it's very unlikely France can solo allying with England, I think they could pretty easily get a two-way draw. So I think for both of them, it's a pretty safe alliance for both of them.
That's a good point. I think you're probably right there.
Yeah. Personally though, I mean, a lot of French players, will do that though. So, I mean, the thing is, when you get to a very high rank, you start losing points when you get draws.
Yes.
So these days, I can't really ally with France anymore because most of the time they're smart enough to, protect themselves.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as England, you prefer to work with Russia or Germany now?
The thing is, I think it's very uncommon. I don't really know why. This might sound surprising, but my personal preference for England as an ally is Russia. And there's a certain opening I sometimes suggest to the Russian players. Sometimes they're nervous and don't take it, but I really think I actually think England-Russia alliance might be the strongest in the game, and I think it's definitely the most undervalued. So do you want me to tell you about the opening I usually suggest?
Yes.
Okay, so basically, what Russia does, so I just tell Russia, hey, Russia, it might sound surprising to you, but when I play as England, my most preferred ally is Russia, and I'm totally fine with you taking Norway if it's with an army. I just tell them I'm totally fine with that in exchange for helping me get some other centers. So the way the opening works, I mean, I guess it's a bit of a dangerous opening for Russia. I mean, maybe Austria moved to Galicia or something. So what they do is, they send Warsaw to Silesia, Moscow to St. Petersburg. Maybe they bounce in the Black Sea with Turkey or just, agree to a DMZ there.
Hmm.
And so here's the thing. So because they've moved to Silesia, Germany's probably going to bounce them out of Sweden, right?
Yeah.
So then what happens is it's a reasonable way for England to get two builds. So I usually open to the channel, and this gives me a chance of taking Belgium. Sometimes it does. It gives me a chance of taking Belgium or Brest, not always though.
Yeah.
But then so what Russia does is Russia moves to the Baltic, and then when Germany moves to Sweden, I convoy the North Sea convoys the army in Yorkshire into Denmark. So
I thought that might be what you were going to say.
yeah, and so it's.
Opening.
And the thing is, it's really I've played with it. I actually I've played with it once as Russia and only once as Russia and once as England. But usually we were able to take down Germany by 1904.
I think I've been hit with that as Germany.
Been hit with that? Oh,
I think so. Yeah. I wonder if that was you.
no, I don't think it was you because I remember because I usually play in anonymous games, but I noticed the people afterwards. So no, I don't think it was me.
Well, it's a pretty good. That's a pretty good tactic. It definitely works.
Yeah. So one thing I like about the alliance, I think it gives a viable strategy for both Russia and England to solo.
Hmm.
And I think it's a bit similar to the Juggernaut as well. Like here's the thing. Like I don't think the Juggernaut is maybe the most powerful alliance, like people say, but I think one reason they feel that way is because it's one of the most stable.
Hmm.
Personally, when I'm playing as Turkey in a Juggernaut, for example, I would only stab Russia after I've taken a center like Marseille because I want one of those things across the stalemate line.
I can definitely see that.
Yeah, so I think in some ways it makes sense because Russia's probably if England's allied with you and just wants to go after France after Germany is gone, you should probably focus on the south.
Yeah, I think. I think that makes sense. I think you can. It's definitely interesting to see it as a kind of Juggernaut flipped north to south instead of east to west.
Yeah. Maybe we could call it the Northern Juggernaut. So, and I think it's all because the thing is, personally, as Russia, I also feel that's the preferred strategy, is just to stick with England. Because also, even if you do, go after England, now you're completely surrounded. You've got France neighboring you. You've got Austria and Turkey neighboring you. That just leaves you more surrounded. As well for England. So I think. Because also the thing is for England, it's much easier to take Scandinavia later because Scandinavia is very difficult to defend. Also, like St. Petersburg, for example, St. Petersburg isn't part of the stalemate line. If you put enough units there from the north, it's impossible to defend it.
Right.
So one thing I also think about this, I think what Italy does a lot really affects I think what Italy does also has a big impact on which person benefits more from this. Because in one game I was playing as Russia, I actually soloed in 1905 as Russia with an English-Russian alliance. But
wow.
Yeah, so maybe I'll try to explain a little bit. So in 1901, so I put the fleet into Romania.
Mm-hmm.
So then it was easy for me to stab Turkey. So I told Turkey, "Oh, hello, Turkey." So I put my fleet in Romania, and then I built an army in Sev, and I told Turkey, "Oh, hello, Turkey. Is it okay if I move Romania to the Black Sea so I can get my army in Sev into Romania? To help you, us fight Austria more effectively." And, Turkey said, yeah, they were okay with that, but, then they got stabbed. So,
yeah.
And the thing was, so I was able to just gobble up Turkey, and Italy was just fighting Austria from the beginning. So Austria was just totally busy fighting Italy and couldn't intervene. So I was just able to gobble up all of Turkey and then go after Austria, and Italy was still attacking Austria, even though I was clearly a solo threat. Honestly, I don't know. Maybe it's better for England than Russia. I don't know. But the thing is, I think those players made some mistakes. But
yeah, I think usually if Italy's attacking Austria and Russia already looks like a solo threat, that tends to be a mistake.
Yes. So the way I see it, I think Russia can expand a lot faster than England. But I also think for England, it's easier for them to do the stab. And also because, for example, if Russia wanted to stab England, they'd have to maybe build a fleet, and that just sends up alarm bells for England.
Yeah, that's true. I think that's an interesting alliance idea for sure. And I have seen that be effective before.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's so uncommon because I see this all the time. I think the vast majority of English players, they just attack Russia in the beginning of the game, and I don't know why.
It is interesting, isn't it? I think it's because there are so many different ways to do it, or so many different possible strategies for England that are common that would involve attacking Russia. If England is trying to do the Western Triple, which I think is one of the strategies that makes the game much safer for England, or if England is trying to work with Germany. Russia is a common enemy for England and Germany.
Yeah. Whenever I play as England, though, I usually prefer going after France as well as Germany. I mean, usually when I play as Germany, I mean, I tell England, if they'll open to the channel, I'll support them into Belgium and bounce Russia out of Sweden. But I usually like to point out to them, I think the purpose of an England-German alliance is destroying France, as quickly as possible. Because Russia's not really that hard to take down later.
No, probably not.
Yeah, so I think France is the bigger threat.
Yeah, not if you have both England and Germany, then Russia's probably going to be in trouble.
Yeah, some games of England also. I did ally with Germany, but I let Russia take Norway with an army anyway, and I still was able to solo later, even with Germany as my main ally.
It's an interesting point. I mean, it sounds like for English solo chances, the best thing to do is to work with Germany or Russia. Basically saying.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can do it with France, but I mean, if only if the French player really doesn't, it leaves them vulnerable, though. I mean, if they're smart, they won't do that. So yeah, I agree. Allying with Germany is also very good as well. Yeah. I think something interesting about allying with Germany is, like in an English-German alliance, a lot of times it's sort of like, do you stab Germany before you take one of those centers across the stalemate line, or afterwards?
I can see how that would be difficult, because I'm sure Germany is also trying to find the moment to stab England as well.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be second.
Yeah, I was playing in an alliance. In one of my games, I was England and I allied with Germany. So I think one of the mistakes Germany made, well, I mean, this was actually a bit, I'm not sure if it was really their fault. So the Italian player was kind of gullible. I mean, I don't know. This is a true story. So
did the Italian player think they could get Munich and keep it or something?
No, they attacked Austria early, and they were getting attacked by Austria and Turkey, and they asked me to send them fleets to help them attack Turkey, and offered me all of the Turkish home centers in exchange, which...
How thoughtful of them.
I mean, I don't know. I think that was mostly due to luck, but yeah, so I was able to, because we attacked France and we split it up with Italy. So Italy had, Marseille and Portugal. So I don't think Germany was really dumb to do this, because, they were also fighting with Austria. So Germany, I also thought it was a good time to do this. So I think Germany was taking Vienna and Budapest. And I thought, after Germany takes these centers, he's probably going to stab me. But I was able to just get all those, French and, centers from Italy, and then I stabbed Germany. I was able to get into Tunisia later.
Interesting, yeah. With Austria and Turkey attacking Italy, you do have more options because of the chaos over there.
Yeah, I really think an Austrian-Turkish alliance benefits England, although it's uncommon.
That is an interesting point, because it will weaken the powers that are closer to England.
Yeah, exactly. So Austria's a threat to Germany, Italy, and Russia. Yeah, it's true. Because Turkey and Austria are England's natural allies, so if they're both still there. I did notice in that game it was one of the easier solos because of that.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Interesting points. So you've just gone into a natural ally for England. I think that does make sense as a natural ally for England going into the mid and late game. Austria or Turkey. Any other alliances you want to discuss relating to England or any other countries, really?
Well, I guess other countries. Well, I guess one thing with England. I mean, I mentioned the England-Russia alliance. I mean, if you can get Italy on board with that as well, that could also be a very strong alliance.
I like the flexibility with which you see the English position, because most of the time when I'm in England, I just think, oh, great, I have to figure out how to keep France and Germany and Russia from all attacking me. But I like the way you're seeing it as a kind of a collection, a long list of options for England. Something we haven't really mentioned. What do you think about the Western Triple as an alliance?
The Western Triple can be good, but I think the English player shouldn't get too complacent with this. In one of the previous games, I was playing as Russia in the previous game. It ended up in a draw that I was included in. But so the English player, okay, so I'll tell you what the English player did. So So they made a full attack on me, Russia. And then, but the thing is, they were leaving themselves completely vulnerable to France. Like after 1901, they built a fleet in Edinburgh instead of London, they were just wide open to a stab from France.
Yeah.
And I said to France, hey France, it's not, you should go for the solo. Even if England's your friend, you should teach them. Like I was basically saying, France, you shouldn't feel bad about stabbing England. This will help them. This will help them improve their play. You shouldn't be ashamed of this. Like, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So then France just walked into London. So
sometimes you got to walk into London.
Yeah. So,
English players.
Yeah. So that was another example. In this case, I was Russia. This was another example. I saw one of those England players going after Russia. I mean, the thing is, I'm not sure if a Western triple. The thing is, if France, I think a Western triple can leave England open to a stab by France, though. Because usually that requires a northern opening and usually some, getting into a deep fight with Russia, and that leaves you open to a French stab.
That's a good point. Usually I see the stab coming from north to south, from England to either France or Germany, rather than the reverse. But there are definitely some moments, especially if the English player moves units away too quickly, some moments where England is also vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, if France is really on board, it's great for England. But if I were France, I wouldn't be on board.
Yeah, it is definitely better for England than for either France or Germany.
Yeah, because that thing is Scandinavia. I mean, I guess they probably don't take Denmark, but it's not hard to do that after you take Scandinavia, and then it's impossible. So those are my thoughts on it. I personally wouldn't want a Western triple as Germany either.
For Germany, it's the worst possible alliance.
Yeah, I mean, and sometimes Germany actually suggests it. I'm like, what's wrong with this guy? So,
yes,
yeah.
I agree completely. As Germany, I don't suggest it. I think the only reason to even agree to a Western triple, if you're Germany, is if you know that the other option is England and France both attack you. and then you try to pit them against each other from within the alliance, and turn one of them into your ally against the other.
Yeah, I see. So I guess some other interesting lines. I mean, so there's a lot of interesting alliances. I mean, I think Austria-Italy is very strong as well if it's competent.
I think so too. I think it's. I think if it wasn't strong, then it wouldn't be a significant obstacle for the Juggernaut. But when you make the right choices of moves, it can slow the Juggernaut down quite a bit, or even if the Juggernaut players make mistakes or aren't fully in sync with each other or something, you can even start to gain ground on them, on Turkey especially.
Yeah. Personally, I think if Austria and Italy are competent, they can defend themselves effectively from a Juggernaut.
I think so. I mean, I think it is more difficult, because I do think that the Russian-Turkish position is a little bit stronger, especially because eventually either Austria or Italy is going to be attacked by a Western power.
Yeah, that's true.
But setting aside that ticking time aspect, I do think that Italy and Austria can frequently do pretty well, especially, again, against the Turkish power.
I actually have some thoughts on playing Italy. So I think I managed to solo one game as Italy, actually. So I allied with my main ally was Austria. So I think something important for Italy is to get the fifth center. Just ask Austria for grace. That's pretty reasonable, because Austria's going to get a lot of centers in the Balkan. Why shouldn't you have Greece? I mean, I also point out to Austria, hey Austria, I'm happy to work with you, but I got to point out, if I don't have a fifth center early, I'm just leaving one army at home, and that leaves me vulnerable to a stab. So it's reasonable, because I kind of need two armies at home to really be safe, especially for someone like France as well. So a lot of times they're willing to do that for you. But here's the thing, but not in 1901 though. That's the thing. So the thing is, I take Tunisia in 1901, and then 1902 I support Austria into the Aegean, and then I take Greece at that point, because otherwise because some Italy players ask for this in 1901, and like the Austria players then my fleet's bottled up doing nothing, and if you really want to go after Turkey with me, why are you keeping my fleet in Albania or something? Yeah,
and for Austria, if you as Italy asked for Greece in 1901, that is you asking to get a build when you were already going to get a build that season, and you aren't giving yourself 2 builds or anything. You're just preventing Austria from getting one of his builds.
Yes, exactly. But so I let them get the builds, get the fleet to the Aegean. If Russia's on board, they can usually get into Bulgaria at that point to, get another build.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but then also what I asked for is if I can have all 3 of the Turkish home centers. And I think it's actually reasonable as well, because, Austria takes a lot of the Balkans. It's not really, and, Austria can take, some of the Russian centers later, instead of me, joining Russia to attack them.
That's a good point. I mean, I think if you as Italy are selling to Austria only this idea of a long-term alliance, then yeah, I think it's reasonable for Italy to get the Turkish home centers.
Yes, and also that's easier to make the border safe, because you can put an army in Constantinople, maybe an army in Armenia, and yeah, so it's not a threat to either people.
Right.
The thing is, because here's the thing: if Italy lets Austria take any of the Turkish centers, that leaves Italy vulnerable to a stab later. I mean, Austria can take the Turkish centers from them and then go after them. So I think that's important.
I agree.
So then, I guess part of it was luck in that game, but like the Western powers were just going at it. Like France seemed indecisive about who he wanted to ally with, and just seemed on the fence, and so nothing was really happening there for a long time. So after I took the Turkish home centers, I went after France, and I was able to, and I had some help from Germany. England didn't really give me much help because he was getting attacked by France, but so Germany got Paris, and I was able to take Iberia. France was still, I think eventually Germany and France went after England. So I mean, France had some English centers, Germany had some English centers, but I was able to take Iberia from France. And then at that point, I was able to stab Austria effectively and get the solo.
Excellent.
Yeah. The thing is also, one thing I think about, so Russia and Austria, they were kind of stalemating each other, because the Western powers weren't really going after Russia or anything. They were just fighting each other. So Austria and Russia weren't really making any progress against the other. So I thought, oh, wow, this is a good chance for me to go after France, because France is vulnerable and, Austria is busy elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, so I guess a lot of that is due to, like, the Western powers not getting their act together, though. But I think Austria is a good ally for Italy. That's my preferred ally. And I think if Austria is willing to agree to that deal, it's a good plan.
Yeah, I think if you can be allied with Austria in the early and mid game, that's definitely pretty optimal, because, like, I just think of Italy's other options, and you can't really be allied with France, I don't think. I mean, you could, but I think that you're probably going to be lunch for France then.
Eventually, because they need Tunisia to solo, and that's the easiest one for them to take.
Yeah, and I think that Italy will have probably the same problem allying with Turkey as with France. I think the good Italian alliances are either with Austria or Russia in the early to mid game. And if you're allying with Russia, I always say you want to try to get rid of Turkey first before Austria. Yeah.
I think basically what most Italy players need to do is just ask for a good deal.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them don't do that. Like, I've sold countless, like, I'm pretty good at Austria. I've sold lots of games as Austria, but I think a lot of that is just due to the Italian player. Like, the Italian player lets me take, all the Balkans, and they let me get a piece of Turkey also. They've got, like, 5 centers, while I've got, like, 9 or something.
I think much of the time the Italian player winds up with either a losing alliance or no friends. And that's also a problem. I mean, asking for and securing a good deal is definitely what you want to do if you're able to get an alliance. But I feel as if a lot of the time, the things that you want to do as Italy, you're just going to have trouble finding a partner for, because Italy just doesn't seem as strong of an ally to some people.
I think it's very easy for Italy to get a good deal from Austria, because let's face it, if Austria is smart, they know if Italy attacks them, they're doomed.
Yeah.
I mean, they're doomed. Like, if Italy attacks you, you're just toast. There's nothing you can do about it. So, if they're just asking for Greece and the Turkish home centers, I mean, do you want to give them a good deal, or do you want to get attacked by them?
I think as Austria, that is a compelling argument. Although,
I mean, I think here's the thing, though. I think the thing is, like, Austria literally has to have Italy as an ally. They have to. So, I mean, I question whether it's actually difficult for Italy to get a good deal from them.
I think Austria is the only power that will usually be happy to work with Italy early on, unless England and Germany are planning to attack France together. But if Italy does make a deal with Austria, frequently they're on the losing side between the Juggernaut and the Austro-Italian alliance. And when they're not on the losing side, I think, I don't know, some Austrians are a little unreasonable. And I do think that even if the Austrian player was pretty reasonable, it might still be a tough sell asking for all of the Turkish home centers. I mean, I'm not saying that I wouldn't give that if I was Austria necessarily, although I'm not sure. I think it would depend on my diplomacy elsewhere as well. And of course, there's also the possibility that Austria might want to work with Turkey.
That's true.
So there are some complicated considerations there, but I do think Italy and Austria working together usually makes sense, and Austria should be willing to give Italy a good deal.
Yeah. Also, something I noticed, I think we've both played games as Austria where we allied with Turkey and soloed with that. A lot of people seem to think, like I've heard people that'll say, it's an abomination. Like the Turkey-Austria alliance, it's an abomination. It's unnatural.
To be honest, I think that as Turkey or Austria, I prefer working with Austria over Russia. I mean, as either one, I think I prefer that alliance over working with Russia. Although, as Turkey, it's a little bit closer for me.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I mean, with Turkey, though, the thing is, I think if the Austrian player is smart, though, they'll usually ask that Turkey mostly build fleets rather than armies.
Yeah, that's true.
So sometimes... Because the thing is, eventually I have to go after Austria, and if I've only got a bunch of fleets, that makes it hard for me. So,
well, yeah, that would make it hard for you.
Here's what, I will admit though. So usually my plan is Turkey is I get Russia and Italy to attack Austria, and then when Austria is upset at them, he doesn't really demand that I build fleets because he just wants to get revenge at them, so I can just have as many armies as I want. So I mean, I think that's a very effective strategy for slowing is Turkey. You get those two to attack them, and then ally with Austria. When they no longer, But for example, in your game, I think, because the thing is, because in both of the games, I think in both of our games, we decided to ally with Turkey early, just from the beginning, without waiting to be attacked by these other people.
Yeah.
Actually, in the game I played in that game where I allied with Turkey, I actually opened with a hedgehog. I just tried it. I don't know. It wasn't bad.
Yeah, no, it's a decent defensive option.
So Turkey took Greece. I liked it. It was a good alliance, he supported me into Romania. I really appreciated that support.
Mm-hmm.
It was good. One thing I think was smart as Austria, though, I actually didn't really antagonize Italy that much. I'm not sure if, maybe I could take Venice, but I didn't think it was really worth it. So I went after Russia, and the thing is, Italy was obviously worried about this, but I always told Italy, hey Italy, I'm just going after Russia. I'm not attacking you.
Yeah.
So whereas Turkey was sort of attacking Italy. So then once I was done with Russia, I was able to get some Italian help going after Turkey and then stabbing Italy.
I think that makes perfect sense as Austria. I've got to use this Turk, Italy. I need him to help me attack Russia, and then later, now we can settle these matters in the south. Once Russia's basically gone, Turkey is Turkey can be dispensed with, or Italy can be betrayed, or both. And I think once Russia's gone, Austria has a lot of options.
Yeah, I do agree. I think it can really work for both of them. For Turkey though, it really is a difference about whether Austria decided that from the beginning, or if they decided because they're getting attacked by their two neighbors. Because you might have noticed. In both of our games as Austria, we were able to completely destroy Turkey later. So,
that's a good point. It does depend on what the diplomacy is between Turkey and Austria. You have to kind of make sure that that the distribution of centers and of forces favors you. So, if you're Turkey, you have to make sure that Austria is going to let you move some armies through Russia, basically. And if you're Austria, you have to make sure that isn't going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So,
you have to get Turkey to focus on the Mediterranean after they get you into Sevastopol, basically. And either way, I think it's going to be a tough sell. But this is an alliance, Austria-Turkey, that I think is much more even than Russia-Turkey, where I find Russia tends to grow faster, or Austria-Russia, where they're going to be, I think, in a greater level of tension for more of the game. With Austria-Turkey, I think the only key thing is which one of you did the better negotiating when you were making deals.
Yeah.
With Austria-Russia, I usually think that unless Russia experienced a disproportionate amount of the growth compared to Austria, Austria will usually end up killing Russia.
Yeah, that's true. Because Austria eventually runs out of room.
Yeah. And there's always some natural tension there, I think, because Romania is next to a home supply center from both Austria and Russia. And so either one of them is going to want either that to be totally vacant or that to be manned by one of their units for their own security. And so there's this natural point of mutual vulnerability.
Yeah, I agree.
Other alliances or positions you want to talk about?
Well, I think a Russian-Austria alliance, I think that's very powerful. I think it's more powerful than a juggernaut, but the issue is it's not as stable.
Yeah.
But for example, if Germany's throwing armies your way, Austria's a pretty good ally for Russia.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. It is very situational there.
Yeah, it's a bit of a shame, really. Someday I'd really like to try a long-term Russia-Austria alliance, just seeing how it goes for the long term. But unfortunately, that's difficult.
I think so.
It would be interesting to see, though.
Yeah, I think the way people usually think about it is that they think that Russia is the ideal ally, whether you're Austria or Turkey, and that basically Austria and Turkey are fighting over which one of them gets to work with Russia.
Yeah,
it's not really how I feel.
That might actually be why Russia is a strong power. It might be partly due to the metagame where those people think, yeah. Because I do note, I mean, as I said, like a lot of people, they said, the Turkey-Austria, it's an abomination.
I think one of my favorite alliances is the I think this one's called Wintergreen, where it's Italy and Russia.
Yeah.
Because it's a little bit less expected, but I think that they balance each other out and are stabler than Austria-Russia. And if you got rid of Turkey already, then it can function a lot like the Juggernaut, except for that Italy, I think, might even be better as a partner than Turkey. It'll be stronger, and so it'll be a little bit more even and maybe stabler than Turkey.
Yes, I agree. I think sometimes that's difficult to do, though, because sometimes England or Germany might be going after Russia early.
That's true. You have to have managed that stuff pretty well. You have to have found a way of driving a wedge between the Western powers and inserted yourself on one side so that you have an ally, if you could figure out how to do that. Get them in chaos, prevent them from settling their issues, and jump in to help either England or Germany, probably England, against the other two. And usually I think trying to stay neutral as to what's going on in the West. If you have things in the East sort of under control, I think trying to stay neutral as to what's going on in the West is a mistake.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, what do you think of France-Germany working together?
I mean, I guess that could work. I mean, personally, I feel France would be the stronger power. I mean, because the thing is, if France has Iberia and Belgium, and they've also got all of the English home centers, they're a solo threat.
Yeah, I think a key issue is that Germany tends to get less when they attack England.
Yeah.
Germany tends to somehow avoid getting any of the English centers almost.
Yeah, almost. And I also think this is another reason why France might be such a strong power, because the thing is, like, when France is at those 9 centers, they're a solo threat, but I think people don't see them as that because they aren't as big as other... Like, I think some people feel like, like being a solo threat is based on how many centers you have, but it's actually just the position.
I mean, yeah, the position is the big thing that matters. Like, but I do get people taking the center count into consideration too, and I think I do to some extent because it's very difficult to impossible to jump from 8 or 9 centers to having a solo in 1 year or something. I mean, but if the position was
year, yeah. But for France though, I think they can very well do that because the thing is, they'll probably have the strongest navy. I think the way I see it, I think this is something interesting I learned from Brother Board. So he has this idea that fleets are more effective in the north and armies are more effective in the south.
Huh. Interesting.
So if France has the strongest navy, because the thing is, and he also points out, and I agree with him, the thing is, if you have 9 or 10 of one of those areas on the board, and you also have the strongest army or navy as well, you can probably take the entire area.
Yes.
So I think if France has 9 or 10 centers, and they've got the strongest navy in the north, which they usually will at that point, they can probably take the entire north, like from St. Petersburg all the way to Iberia. And then all they need is Tunisia, or maybe Moscow or something. So I really do believe they can get the solo from that point.
Well, that's a good point. I think that's a good point. That France does look a lot more like a solo threat when you. It does tend to look a lot more like a solo threat when England has been defeated.
Yeah, but I think some people feel like, well, it's 9 centers. It's they're not going to get to 8. They're not going to double that anytime soon. But eventually they are in a position to do that.
Yeah, now that you mention it, I mean, once they have those centers that we've mentioned, it's not a far stretch for them to get all of Scandinavia and St. Pete and Germany.
Yeah. Also, from my point of view, Scandinavia is pretty much the hardest place to defend. I mean, if somebody has a stronger navy, you can't defend that.
Yes. Agreed. Completely.
So France is able to take out Germany afterwards. It's just, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they can't get Tunisia for some reason, but yeah.
And going back to that thing you mentioned earlier about fleets being more effective in the north, armies more effective in the south, I think that's absolutely right. And I think the reason is because of how navigable Scandinavia is by fleet, as compared to Italy, where you can easily, with just a couple fleets, you can kind of stop people from making progress. If they don't significantly outnumber you. But even then, you can slow their progress down by a lot. And that's not really possible in the north.
Yeah. In that game I soloed as Italy, I actually only had 4 fleets, and the rest were armies.
Interesting.
Because you need to get those armies into Turkey to keep it safe. You need to get those armies into France.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And I think some Italy players focus too much on fleets. I think they feel like they're a naval power when, in the south, you actually need armies most. I mean, after 1901, it makes sense to build the fleet, but...
No, those are good points. People do think of Italy as a naval power, and usually, I think the only reason why some Italians tend to build armies is because they want to stab Austria or something. But
yeah. It was interesting, though. I actually built a lot of armies, and Austria was kind of nervous about that, but I wasn't really attacking them with it. I was just putting them in Turkey, like Constantinople, Armenia, sending them at France.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point.
Leaving some on defense.
I think that this conversation might actually improve my game a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you've already shared some ideas that I've personally never tried working together with Russia as England in the way you described. And then there's also this bit about the fleets in the north and the armies in the south. That's also a pretty good insight.
Yeah, I agree. That's also one thing when we were talking about Turkey allying with Austria. The thing is, I think Turkey at most, I guess early Turkey needs to build some fleets to keep them safe. But by the end of the game, I think Turkey at most needs like by the end game, I think Turkey needs maybe 5 fleets at max. Maybe 6 if they're going to take Portugal or something. But I mean, Turkey. I mean, the thing is, Turkey's a land power. They're in the south. They need more armies than fleets.
That's a good point.
Like whenever I'm playing as Turkey, I try to have more armies than fleets. And so if Austria's already been attacked by both neighbors, they might not have a problem with that. But early game, Austria's probably going to want me to have more fleets than armies, and that's something that I don't think that's a good strategy in the south. I mean, because the thing is, as Austria, we had more armies than Turkey, and we were able to destroy them.
Yeah. You are raising some interesting strategic ideas that I'm thinking about this because, as Russia, I've frequently allied with Turkey under the terms that Turkey will be our navy and
Yeah.
I'll be our army, and it works. It's worked really well for me as Russia, and the Turkish player tends to grow more slowly. And now that you mention it, I'm thinking maybe it's partially because of this differential.
Yeah, I think you might have a. I think you might be more willing to ally with Turkey with Russia as Turkey if you keep your armies more than fleets. I mean, the thing is, five max, maybe six if you think you can take Portugal.
Interesting points.
Because with about 5 fleets, that should let you be able to take Marseille or maybe some more of Iberia. But also though, you need those armies to get through Italy. So also another thing with Turkey. I mean, I think a lot of it is just a lot of your power, your ability to destroy Italy. It's mostly using convoy as well. The best way to just invade Italy, I think, is to convoy an army into Apulia.
Yeah, that is a very effective method.
Yeah, and because if you get an army, because armies are much. Yeah,
it is a better force multiplier than having a fleet in Apulia, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So I think people need to realize that Turkey's a land power. You're going to need maybe some fleets to defend yourself, and then later you're going to need some more fleets to get those things. One of French's French centers. There's something else also. I actually talked with Brother Board about this. So he actually feels as Turkey, it's easier to take Munich than Marseille or one of the French centers, but I've never found this to be the case.
I can see how it could be, only because as Russia, it's easy to take Munich. Most of the time I've found it's not very hard as Russia to take Munich. So for that reason, if you're thinking about Turkey as a land power, then I could see how you would end up getting Munich.
I see.
Because, I mean, if you're thinking of Turkey as a land power, then I guess Marseille is like 1,000,000 miles away. Whereas Munich, it's just through Austria, and you were going to kill off Austria anyway. It's probably the thing you get right after you stab Russia, really, because Munich is just across the way from Trieste and Vienna. It's just through Tyrolia. So, but yeah. I don't know. I do think that I am a little skeptical about that conclusion. I feel like Marseille should be easier to get for Turkey than Munich.
I mean, the thing is, I sort of feel like, if I want to take Munich, I could do that, but I feel like I have to maybe be allied with Italy and just go through Austria and Russia, and then maybe have Italy leaving me alone.
Well, I think that's an interesting point, because usually the natural thing for Turkey to do is to try and kill off Italy.
Yeah.
In fact, in my Basics of Italy, my first video on Italy, I said that France and Turkey are your natural enemies because they will both inevitably come after you if you're Italy.
Yeah.
So I do think that that's an issue. Like, how exactly is Turkey going to end up in Munich diplomatically?
Yeah, I mean, because Russia would probably want Munich for themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess
if you're a great negotiator, you get Munich.
Maybe, but I mean, even then, if you stop, yes, maybe.
But I do think you raise a good point that that's an idea that might have a couple holes in it.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think the real point of Turkish fleets is, to just help defeat Italy and then grab one of those centers far away, but they need land power to take the other ones. And also, I think it makes a lot of sense, that fleets dominate in the north while armies dominate in the south also, because if you think about the north, I mean, there's only two landlocked centers in the north. There's Munich and Paris. That's it. Yeah. Every other center there is next to the sea.
Yeah, whereas in the south you have Vienna, Budapest, Serbia, and the centers that aren't landlocked are usually they're not islands, they're not England, they're all reachable by land.
Yeah.
And so there's a number of good reasons why fleets are more powerful in the north. I totally buy that, actually.
Yeah.
Any other strategic or tactical insights you'd like to offer my audience? I think this has been pretty rewarding so far.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let me think about it. Well, one thing I'd like to mention is Turkey. I mean, I'm not actually sure if I'm a good Turkish player. I mean, I've sold as Turkey, but every single time in those games I did that, the other players made terrible mistakes.
That's something I often wonder about with my Turkey and my Italy. and for that matter, even my Germany. I would say that I've soloed as each of those powers, although only very rarely as Italy. But I do feel as if you have to have, if you're playing by the conventional strategies that I think I usually have played by, like Turkey in a juggernaut should grow more slowly than Russia. And so someone needs to make a mistake for you to solo as Turkey if you're in a juggernaut, which is the kind of the default for a lot of people. It's been a while since I played a game as Turkey, I think, but I think probably in the last game I played as Turkey, we did a juggernaut and then we finished with a two-way draw. But and as Italy, using again the conventional strategies, it is hard to grow quickly, and it's harder to win than it is to win as other countries. That's what the statistics show, I think. And in my case, maybe my German strategy was not as effective as it should have been, so it was harder for me than it should have been. But I do feel like when I've soloed as those countries, it has been because of other players making really significant mistakes or fighting each other for longer than they should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've soloed with every other country without, like, I mean, I guess if somebody solos, that means somebody made a mistake, but there was nothing very glaring.
Exactly.
Whereas with Turkey, I've soloed twice. So in one of the games, I was a clear solo threat, and then so England posted on the public press, Germany screwed me and is now blaming me for his impending loss. Let the bloodbath begin. so they could have stopped me, but yeah. So and I actually even like said I actually just was posting evil laughs on the public press after that, and Germany was even pointing out that I'm just laughing while they're fighting each other, but. I mean, I'm openly posting evil laughs on the public press, but they just keep fighting each other.
Yeah, I can totally see that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not really sure if that. Yeah. So, I mean, I think I played well, but.
Right. I know there are some games where you may have played well, but it kind of feels like.
Yeah. I think something interesting about Turkey is Turkey doesn't actually really need an ally. Like, if all of your neighbors are fighting each other, you can just grow and just take advantage of that.
That's a fair point. That's a sort of a corner power privilege. Just doesn't usually happen to England as much.
Yeah.
Usually the diplomacy is more like which one of us is going to get which English center.
I guess so. I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe there's an anti-English meta.
I think there might be. Like, I don't know. I think I even have fallen prey to it a few times.
Yeah.
As England and also as France and Germany.
Yeah, I mean, as France, I think that's understandable. Though, like I said, I still think France can easily get a two-way draw with England, allying with them. But I mean, it's Germany or Russia. I think England's a very viable ally.
I think you are. I think you make a good point. Oh, you made a lot of good points.
Thanks. I think a lot of Journey players, when they just start out at the beginning, they just have this idea, oh, it's an island, so it's hard to attack, but it's not actually really. You just get a fleet in the North Sea and you just convoy an army there.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the German players might be remembering the 1,000 years of English history in real life without a successful invasion.
Yeah, that it also. I mean, also, there's something you mentioned. I mean, I remember you mentioned, I think we were discussing, like in a forum, whether it was easier to stab England or France, and you said you disagreed. Because you said with Italian help you could take down France. But the thing is, like, from my point of view, Germany can't take down France alone. So yeah, you might get help from Italy. With help from Italy, you can do that. But, I mean, we've seen in some of the games on the forums, like I think in one of the games you posted on the forum, you were able to take down England alone.
That's true. I was able to essentially fight England with one hand, and slowly I was killing them off while advancing elsewhere. It was kind of surprising, actually, that England seemed relatively easy to stab.
Yeah, well, they're not on any. Their centers aren't on any stalemate lines or anything. I mean,
and there's a lot of distance between things that England needs to defend. England has an island, and so there's a bunch of water separating any new armies or fleets he creates from all of the other spaces that he might technically control.
Yeah. So I mean, I think people should at least consider allying with England when they're Germany. I mean, personally, I think it's easier to win with them as your ally.
I mean, you've definitely sold me on it as being at least as good as allying with France. And probably better if you don't have some sense that Italy is immediately going to jump on France with you as soon as England's gone.
Yeah.
Because really, I think more like the thing that has sort of convinced me more that you're right, that France is a more dangerous ally than England, is the likelihood that while you're thinking about gearing up to fight France, you're going to get attacked by Russia. And I think if you're allied with England, then Russia's probably going to be looking at working with you against England or something, rather than, or at least there's a decent chance of that, rather than Russia wanting to fight you. Or you will have invaded Russia by the time you go after England. And with France, I've just seen too many times that France does have a tendency to invade Germany after England is gone, and while Germany is maybe trying to get into Russia. The French armies are just not going to have much to do other than that.
Yeah, exactly.
And fighting Italy doesn't usually have the same urgency for France. It's not like he has to do that on a deadline if he could be going after Munich.
Yeah, I mean, all he really needs is Tunisia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so any other insights you would like to share right now?
Well, I guess it was really. So I watched one of your videos. It was the Talleyrand game.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I guess it's mostly related to the topic we were just discussing. But the Germany player there, who's saying, oh yeah, I'm sorry, I got to attack England. That's just how it is, no matter what. It's like, but I noticed. And I thought, Turkey. I thought the Turkey player in that game was like saying some wise things. It's like, France is likely going to get all of the English centers, and also, what is Germany getting? Because Russia already has Sweden and Norway. So if Germany's allied with Russia, what is he getting?
Yeah, Germany, unfortunately, cut a really bad deal with France, where France got the vast bulk of the gains from England. 3 out of the 4 centers that could have been divided up went to France. And in addition to that, Germany had an alliance with Russia, and I'm not saying that's impossible. I've just always thought that Russia is a natural enemy for Germany, and so Germany is really just between 2 large, probably hostile powers at this point, deciding which one he's going to fight. And neither of them has an opponent, a prospective opponent at that moment other than Germany. It is kind of in question whether Germany can navigate its way around that.
Yeah. That's also, France also tends to be a natural ally for Russia as well. Mm-hmm. So they'd probably be communicating together.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So many games, it ends with a Russia, Turkey, France draw. Because if the Juggernaut is successful, then that's probably the natural way it's going, unless it ends in a solo.
Yeah, so I thought that Germany player in that game was one of those examples of things I don't think you should actually do.
Yeah, no, you have a very good point. And the sheer number of illustrations of this point has really been changing my mind recently, because I have been seeing that happen to Germany when they ally with France over and over again in various games.
Do you have any other thoughts about what to discuss?
I do not right now.
Okay, we could talk about one thing about getting solos.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of the time, I think people need to realize that some centers are more valuable than others, depending on which country you're playing. Yes. So I think you have to realize that, and also, it's also like okay. So I guess could be a new topic. So some centers are more valuable than others. For example, the Turkish centers, are more valuable than the Austrian centers for Italy, for example, because those are easier to defend.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And this also kind of plays into the thing with Germany allying with French. It's like, the English centers are easier to defend than Norway or Sweden. As I said, Scandinavia is pretty much the hardest to defend place.
Yeah.
So it's not just so France, I think, is taking more valuable centers than that one.
That's a good point also.
Yeah, because is Norway really defensible?
I don't think so. I think it can be attacked from multiple directions. And
exactly. So the thing is, France is likely to get, maybe even more centers, but also more valuable ones. And I also think that's important for, getting a solo. Because, for example, you have to think, whenever you're trying to get a solo, you have to have a strategy for, how do I get those centers on the other side of the stalemate line? Because a lot of people, they just think, oh, I'm getting big, that means I'm winning, but that's not really true.
That's
Um,
perfect.
for example, like you could be Turkey. So you could be Turkey, for example. You might not have, maybe you have 9 centers or so, but you've got Marseille. I mean, you're much more powerful than a Turkey with 17 that's hit a stalemate line.
Hmm. Yeah, that's true. The stalemate lines are are a killer for
I
people.
actually like the stalemate lines. I think they really
They
make the
enforce
strategy.
discipline.
Yeah, I mean, also it makes it more possible to make draws.
Mhm.
I like them personally. Some people complained about it and they think the 1900 variant is better, but
Hmm.
but
Yeah, I don't really love the variants that don't have stalemate lines. They make
yeah,
the tactical aspect seem I don't know, both less important and also harder to manage
yeah,
because if you can be attacked from any angle and there aren't reliable defensive stances you could take, you just kind of have to start guessing what your opponent's going to do and trying to counter the specific thing you think they're going to do. And there's an element of that in diplomacy, but in normal diplomacy, on the classic map. But a lot of the time, that guessing is based upon patterns of behavior that are common or upon spaces that you know are tactically important for the other person to have or important for you to have. Whereas I haven't really played a lot of 1900 variant, but
I prefer classic.
you prefer.
Also, 1900 makes France. They totally overreacted with France. It's just impossible. Look, I mean, I don't. Do you want me to tell you why?
Go ahead.
Okay, so England. So in the 1900 variant, England starts with a fleet in Gibraltar, and they also start with a fleet in Egypt. So if England wants to, they can move into the Channel and also support a fleet into the mid. So England can have Gibraltar support Egypt into the Mid-Atlantic Ocean while moving to the Channel, and so like England can get into. So France cannot do anything to stop England from getting into Mid-Atlantic
That sounds kind of
in
scary.
1901. Yeah, I mean they just and also I noticed every single time England soloed in this variant, they did that.
Huh. I'll
I mean,
keep that in mind.
yeah, so I mean, I think it was supposed to create more balance because it separates because it sort of has Milan, so so Italy isn't bordering Austrian centers, but
I mean, I think that might be a good thing for Italy and Austria.
yeah, but it's just I mean just totally unbalanced because also there's 2 centers, so there's also Switzerland in the variant. So
Mhm.
Italy can like put 2 armies on Marseille, and England could just get a fleet into the Mid-Atlantic, and it's like so the thing is, and the thing is also, as usual, the best strategy for England to solo is to destroy France. So most England players will realize this and do that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good point. It does sound less balanced than.
yeah. I mean, yeah. I think they felt like France was one of the more powerful ones in the game, and I think they just overdid it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, also it's weird because instead of England starting with an army in Liverpool, they just have they start with only fleets around the map.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of funny.
Yeah. So instead of Army Liverpool, you have Fleet Gibraltar, which can just support a fleet into the Mid Atlantic without any possible opposition.
I mean, I think that oftentimes people do wish they had 3 fleets at the beginning of the game as England, um, just because England's mostly going to be doing fleets anyway.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
that does sound weird.
Yeah.
I
But
mean, sorry.
yeah. Yeah, so I feel the variant is unbalanced, and also it pretty much makes an England-France alliance impossible because also there's like if you have a fleet in the Mid-Atlantic Ocean, you can move to Egypt, so it's like, yeah, it's a mess.
It sounds like a mess. Yeah.
I mean, I prefer classic to it.
I I can understand why. I've only played on 1900 once or twice, I think, but didn't really love it. So
Yeah,
glad to know that you share that opinion. I think.
yeah. I mean, it's just it's just very unbalanced. I mean, maybe not for the other countries, but it's just like it's literally impossible for France to defend themselves, and and the best strategy for other players is to attack them. So, yeah,
Well, if you unbalance one relationship in the game, you kind of unbalance all of them. So
that's true. I think that's true. Like sometimes people think, oh, France is too strong, so let's weaken them here, but they overdo it, and then it just so now England is super strong.
yeah, I don't think France is that strong. It's just a bit stronger. If you
Yeah.
wanted to weaken them, I guess you could give Germany an extra center or something.
That's an interesting idea. I mean, 1900 has Germany with 4 centers, which I think is interesting. But considering the other stuff happening with France, makes it worse. This is like England can get a fleet in the Mid-Atlantic, no matter what you do. Italy can get 2 armies on your border, threatening Marseille in 1901, and Germany has 4 centers.
Yeah, enjoy that.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting, the idea of Germany having a 4th center. That might be an interesting variant.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think there's a tendency for Germany and Austria both to get swamped early on by all of their neighbors. And I don't know, since they're in Central Europe, I think there could be some benefit to maybe giving one or each of them an extra center in terms of balance.
I mean, I think historically related, it would make more sense for Germany to have a 4th center based on their power at the time. I mean, that's another thing that 1900 was trying to do. They were trying to make Germany and England more powerful because they were the more powerful empires at the time. I mean, I don't think France was that weak at the time, though.
No, it did control a lot of Africa.
Yeah.
And it had lost a war with Prussia some years before, but it wasn't weak. If it was, then England and France would not have held off the German Empire for so long.
Yeah.
But
I think classic is good, though. I mean, I think the idea of a 4th center for Germany is interesting, but I don't think Germany is really a weak power in diplomacy classic.
I don't think it is either. I think that Germany and Austria have more to deal with, but that's not the same as being weak. They have additional diplomacy to do.
Yeah. It makes it a lot of players actually tell me, like some really skilled Austria players. I mean, Brother Board told me this. He actually told me he felt it was easier to solo with Austria than England.
I think that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's true as well. I mean, for a long time I felt the same way. I think maybe recently though I've considered more options with England, and I think that's improved my skill as England.
For me, I think Austria is one of the easier countries to play, period. I think that the thing that gives Austria a bad rap is just the high likelihood of getting destroyed early on. But yeah. I think if you survive the early game as Austria, you can usually do quite well, and you can solo a decent percentage of the time.
Yeah. When I first started playing, Austria was my favorite country because it's like, if I survive, I'll probably win. I'll have a good chance of winning, and if I don't, I don't have to waste my time.
That is true. It's not the same as Italy, where there's a decent chance that you're going to stagnate for years. Austria doesn't have the same defensibility as France or England, but if you're being attacked by all of your enemies, how long do you want to draw that out?
Yeah, exactly. When I first started playing diplomacy, I mean, I hated playing Italy as well. Later on, though, I think I improved with it. I mean, I think it's difficult to solo as Italy, but I'm usually able to get a draw as Italy.
Yeah, I think I've gotten better as Italy as well. It's really just pursuing the solos that makes it an interesting challenge.
I also kind of wonder if a lot of people just I mean, because in a lot of those games previously when I hated playing Italy, I wasn't really paying as much attention as I should have, and maybe I just kind of resigned myself to doom. So I wonder if that's another issue with it.
I think the big issue with Italy is that it's more dependent on diplomacy than some of the other powers, because in diplomacy you really can't do anything by yourself, right? You need allies, but more than other countries, I think Italy really needs a firm ally early on, and ideally more than one. And also, it needs one of its other neighbors to be neutral toward it, probably. So I think Italy has just got too many things that it has to get right And that's the trouble Italy tends to have. I think that out of all the countries on the map, Italy is probably the one that's the hardest to get off to a really strong start.
Yeah. I think something else that makes it difficult to solo is the thing is, like, I feel like, based on the game I played also, I feel like to win, Italy needs to send, all of his units to one place. Like, they need to focus all of their armies just in one direction, all of their units in one direction, and then, maybe once they've done that, got a defense there, everything in another direction, but they can't always do that because, a lot of times, France will come after you or Turkey or something.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a burden of being in the center. And Italy is less defensible. It's weird to be saying this, but in the mid-game, Italy is less defensible than Austria.
Yeah.
Austria is kind of dense. And if France decides to try and come east, if Austria has already defeated Turkey and or Russia, Austria is not likely to fall to the French invasion because France is going to be sending fleets east, and Austria needs armies to be conquered. And Italy doesn't. You can conquer Italy with just fleets. So that's also something.
Yeah. Yeah, I really think a lot of that solo I got in that game was a lot due to luck, because just the Western powers just weren't getting their act together for the whole game.
Well, a lot of these games seem to wind up coming down to luck in my eyes, in the sense of, the players you draw and the powers they get. And
yeah, that's true. I was thinking about that. Yeah, like if Germany just thinks, they have to attack England.
That's very lucky for France.
Yeah.
Either that or France was just very convincing. But, that to be for someone to be convinced so thoroughly of something, you have to either have a very strong player or a very strong player doing the convincing, or a relatively weaker player being convinced. And so that is luck, who gets into which slot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to say thank you for putting some time aside to discuss strategy with me. I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to do it again.
Maybe we can do an after-action report or something of a game. I don't know, but we'll come up with some topic and we'll do this again.
Yeah, that sounds great. I really enjoyed talking with you.
I really enjoyed talking with you as well. Thank you. I hope you liked this video and perhaps found it educational. Frankly, I think I learned a bit from this chat with Hunter myself. He's quite a strong player, and although we've disagreed on the forums sometimes, I always learn something when I engage with him. If you liked this video, please like and subscribe. Liking, subscribing, and commenting makes the channel stronger and helps more people see these videos. Also, please comment below with your suggestions for future interview subjects, and I'll look at scheduling more conversations. Until next time, Florida Man out.